Today's remarkable story introduces us to Emily, a young woman full of dreams who was about to experience the most important day of her life. Her wedding to Jason, the seemingly perfect man. Everything seemed in harmony. The dress, the vows, the guests. But there was someone who wasn't so sure. Max, her loyal dog. That morning, Max began acting strangely, as if he wanted to stop Emily from going through with it. Barking, frantic movements, even tearing her wedding dress. Something was wrong. At Max's insistence, Emily discovers something devastating about Jason, something that could completely change the course of her life. What did Max see, and why was he so determined to stop the wedding? This story, full of surprises, will make you question, are we always ready to see what's right in front of us? If you want access to an exclusive selection of real stories that will make you laugh, cry, and reflect, subscribe to the channel right now. It was the start of a day Emily believed would be the most important of her life. The sun illuminated the streets of Seattle, and fresh flowers adorned the yard of the house where she grew up. Emily sat in front of the mirror while her best friend Rachel adjusted every detail of her veil. "You look stunning, Emily," Rachel said warmly. "Jason is going to lose his breath when he sees you walking toward him." Emily let out a small nervous laugh. "I just hope he doesn't trip on his tie," she replied, trying to lighten the mood. Inside, her heart raced, and it wasn't just the normal nerves of a bride. Something felt off. As Emily stood to take one last look at her dress, Max, her golden retriever, entered the room. He seemed more restless than usual, pacing in circles around Emily. "Max, sweetheart, what's going on with you today?" she asked, stroking his golden head. He looked up at her with those deep, sincere eyes, almost as if trying to say something. "He's as nervous as you are," Rachel joked, but Max continued to fidget, barking softly and nudging Emily's dress with his nose. The clock was nearing noon, and the driver was ready to take her to the ceremony. Everything was meticulously planned, from the elegant buffet to the string quartet that would play as she walked down the aisle. Jason, with his usual confidence, had taken care of every detail, part of why everyone admired him so much. "Come on, Max, stop playing around now," Emily said, grabbing her purse. But the dog wouldn't budge. Instead, he followed her to the door and blocked her way when she tried to leave. "Max, what's with you today?" She crouched down to look into his eyes, and he let out a whimper that sounded like a mix of desperation and determination. Rachel laughed. "I think he wants to steal the spotlight on your big day." But Emily didn't find it funny. Max never acted like this. He was the calmest and most loyal dog she had ever known, a gift from her father before his passing. Max had been by her side during every difficult moment and had never done anything so insistent. "You're late, Emily," Rachel reminded her, gesturing toward the waiting car. I know, Emily said, but something inside her wouldn't let her ignore Max's behavior. "Max, what are you trying to tell me?" No matter how hard she tried to move forward, Max stayed in her way, forcing her to stop and look at him again. Rachel sighed. "If he keeps this up, he's going to make you miss your wedding." A chill ran down Emily's spine. A small part of her wondered, is this a sign? The black car gleamed in the sunlight, waiting to take Emily to the ceremony. The driver, a calm-looking older man with gray hair, held the door open. Rachel adjusted Emily's veil, trying to hurry her along. "Come on, bride, we can't be late anymore," Rachel said, laughing as she placed the bouquet in Emily's hands. Emily glanced back at the house one last time and sighed. "Everything will be fine, Max," she said to the dog, who stayed by her side, circling her feet. As she took her first step toward the car, Max darted forward, placing himself in front of her like a living barrier. He barked loudly, even startling the driver. Hey, calm down, boy," the man said, stepping back. "Max, stop it now," Emily said, trying to get past him, but he refused to move. Rachel frowned. "What's going on with him today? Emily, this is getting weird." Emily tried to walk around Max, but he ran in front of her again, barking louder and more desperately. At that moment, he grabbed the hem of her dress with his teeth and tugged, slightly tearing it. "Max!" Emily yelled, staring in disbelief at the torn fabric. "Why are you doing this?" The dog stood there looking directly at her, as if he knew he'd crossed a line, but had no choice. "Rachel, help me here. I don't have time for this," Emily pleaded, almost panicking. Rachel tried to move Max away, but he wouldn't budge. He wasn't angry or aggressive, but seemed determined, as if protecting Emily from something she couldn't see. "This isn't normal," Rachel whispered. Emily took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Max, what do you want? Why are you so determined to stop me?" And then she looked at him again. That look. It was the same look Max had given her when she cried on the couch after losing her father. The same look he gave when she needed comfort, even if she didn't ask for it. "I can't believe I'm doing this, but fine. Let's see what you want." Emily handed the bouquet to Rachel and grabbed Max's leash. "Emily, you're going to ruin everything," Rachel warned. "I know," Emily said with exhaustion, "but something tells me I need to listen to Max." The dog, as if understanding that he was finally being taken seriously, began to walk quickly toward the backyard. Emily, holding her torn dress with one hand, followed him with hurried steps while Rachel stood frozen, unsure of what to do. "If you're just leading me to dig up a bone, Max, I swear I'll lose my patience," Emily muttered, trying to ignore the mix of curiosity and irritation inside her. But something about Max's behavior was different. He didn't look back or hesitate. His steps were firm, his focus fixed on a single point, as if he had something important to show. At that moment, Emily began to wonder, does he know something I don't? Meanwhile, time was ticking. The driver checked his watch impatiently, the guests waited in the church, and Jason was probably starting to wonder where his bride was. Emily, however, was following Max. Something inside her said it was the right thing to do, and she had no idea what she was about to discover. Max nearly dragged Emily along the winding trail that stretched behind the house. Jason's family property was enormous, with dense trees and paths Emily had never explored. The trail was covered with dry leaves and broken branches, but Max didn't hesitate. "Where are you taking me?" Emily asked aloud, but Max didn't stop or look back. As she walked, she tried to imagine what could justify all this insistence. Max always had an incredible instinct, but this was beyond anything Emily had ever seen. Finally, they arrived at a small clearing among the trees. Right there, in the middle of an almost forgotten grove, was an old cabin. The walls were covered in moss, and the windows appeared fogged with age. Emily paused for a moment, her heart racing. "I didn't even know this existed," she said, staring at the abandoned structure. Max barked again, nudging her with his nose as if to say, "Go inside." "Okay, Max, we're here. But what do you want me to see?" Emily took a few hesitant steps toward the door, which was ajar. The wood creaked beneath her feet as she carefully pushed it open. Inside, the cabin was even gloomier. The light filtering through the dirty windows was dim, but enough to reveal old furniture covered in dust. The smell of dampness lingered in the air, and Emily wondered if anyone had been there recently. Max headed straight for a corner of the room, where a wooden table was covered with a worn cloth. He barked again, fixing his eyes on what appeared to be a box partially hidden underneath. "Is this what you want to show me?" Emily asked, leaning in for a closer look. She carefully pulled out the box and found a folder. It was yellowed with age, but the words written on it were clear: confidential. Emily's heart pounded. "What is this?" She opened the folder, and what she saw made her stomach turn. There were documents detailing fraudulent bank transfers, forged contracts, and even emails exchanged between Jason and others, accusing him of manipulation and deceit. Emily kept flipping through the pages, each more disturbing than the last. Attached were photos, images of Jason with other women, smiling as genuinely as he did with her. There were letters from former partners describing how he had deceived them to gain access to assets, resources, or even information he used for his benefit. "Oh my God," Emily murmured, her legs trembling. She sat on an old chair, holding the folder with shaking hands. Everything started to make sense. Jason's perfect behavior, his insistence on organizing every detail of the wedding, and even why he had never taken Emily to see every part of the property. Max stood beside her, watching intently as if he knew she needed that moment to process everything. "You knew," Emily whispered, looking at Max. Tears began streaming down her face. "You knew all along, didn't you?" For a moment, she wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that Jason had an explanation for everything. But the amount of evidence was overwhelming. The truth was right there in her hands. With her mind racing, Emily looked at Max again. He stared back with that intense gaze, as if to ensure she understood he had done this for her. "I can't marry him," she said quietly, almost to herself. And with that sentence, something inside her began to change. Emily left the cabin clutching the folder to her chest. Her heart pounded so loudly it seemed to echo through the woods. Max walked beside her, now calm, as if he knew the worst was over, or about to begin. Every step back to the house felt heavy. Emily's mind was a whirlwind. How did I not see this before? How could I trust someone who hid such terrible things? When she reached the entrance of the house, the atmosphere was completely different. The sound of laughter and music came from afar, where the guests were gathered for the ceremony. But inside the house, everything felt too quiet. Emily took a deep breath before opening the door. Jason was upstairs, finishing getting ready as if nothing was wrong. She could hear his voice talking to the best man on the phone. "Yes, it's going to be a great day." "No, everything is under control," Jason said confidently. Max let out a low growl, as if to say, "Now's the time." Emily climbed the stairs with determination, but with each step, her chest tightened. Finally, she reached the bedroom door. Pushing it open, she entered without warning. Jason had his back turned, adjusting his tie in the mirror. He turned surprised when he saw Emily standing there, still in her torn dress, holding the folder. "Emily, what happened? Why aren't you at the ceremony?" He tried to keep his tone calm, but there was something uneasy in his voice. She held up the folder. "What is this, Jason?" He was silent for a moment, his eyes fixating on the folder in her hands. Then he forced a smile. "Where did you find that? Is this some kind of joke?" "Joke? Does this look like a joke to you?" Emily opened the folder, revealing the photos and documents. "Fraud, manipulation, lies. These women you deceived. Jason, is this true?" Jason stood still for a moment, staring at Emily with a calculated expression. His eyes shifted quickly from surprise to something colder, almost apathetic. "Emily, let's talk about this calmly," he began, trying to maintain a serene tone. Emily clutched the documents tightly to her chest. "There's no calm here, Jason. I saw everything. Fraud, manipulation, even the letters from the women you used before me." Jason took a step forward, but Max, ever watchful, growled low, placing himself between the two. Jason stopped, taking a deep breath. "Fine," he said, raising his hands in surrender. "I made mistakes, but none of this has to do with us. Our marriage is about us, Emily." "Is it really?" Emily asked, her voice trembling between anger and disappointment. "Because it looks like this marriage is just another scheme of yours." "What's the truth, Jason? You've never been honest with me, have you?" For a moment, Jason seemed to hesitate. But then, as if tired of pretending, his face changed. The mask of the loving groom fell away, revealing a man who no longer saw the need to hide his true intentions. "Okay, Emily," he said, his voice turning colder. "You want the truth? The truth is, this was always about business. Your father has important connections, and your family is very well connected. You have no idea how much that can help me." Emily blinked, stunned. "Help me?" Jason laughed without humor. "You were always so easy to please, Emily. You never questioned anything, never looked beyond what was right in front of you. It was almost too convenient." His words hit Emily like a punch. "Convenient? I loved you, Jason. I believed you loved me too." Jason shrugged as if it was irrelevant. "Love? That doesn't pay bills, Emily. It doesn't grow businesses, doesn't open doors. You were just an important piece on the chessboard, nothing more." Emily felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She took a deep breath, trying to keep control. "So you never loved me?" Jason crossed his arms, his expression unyielding. "Does it matter now? Look, I'm not the villain here. Everyone does what they need to do to get ahead in life." Max barked again, as if to say the exact opposite. "You're worse than I could have imagined," Emily said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "I would have given you everything, Jason, everything, and all you wanted was to use it for your own gain." Jason stepped forward, trying to explain. "Emily, listen, No, she interrupted, raising her hand. You've already said everything I needed to hear. She looked at Max, who was by her side as always, and felt a renewed strength. He had been the only one to see the truth from the beginning, to protect her when she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. I'm not marrying you, Emily said, her voice firm and resolute. Jason shook his head, letting out a sarcastic laugh. You're making a big mistake, Emily. No, Jason, she replied. The biggest mistake would have been saying yes to you. With that, Emily turned and walked down the stairs, Max by her side, leaving Jason behind, alone with his empty ambitions. The sound of voices and laughter echoed from the ceremony as Emily walked toward the makeshift altar. But she wasn't in the pristine wedding dress everyone expected. Her dress was wrinkled and torn, her makeup partially smudged, and in her hands the folder containing the truth about Jason. All eyes turned to her, and whispers began immediately. Some guests frowned in confusion, while others murmured in concern. Max stood beside her, like a protective shadow, staring at the crowd as if he knew exactly what was coming. Jason stood at the altar, a nervous smile trying to mask his unease when he saw Emily. He took a step forward, trying to play it off. Emily, you're late. What's going on? Emily stopped in the middle of the aisle, took a deep breath, and looked around. Every face awaited something different, explanations, justifications, or simply for the ceremony to continue. But Emily knew she couldn't go through with it. I can't do this, she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. Silence fell over the crowd. Jason blinked, clearly caught off guard, but quickly tried to regain control. What are you talking about? Emily, come here. We'll sort this out later. Emily shook her head and held up the folder. Number, there is no later, Jason. I know the truth. I know why you wanted to marry me, and it has nothing to do with love. The whispers began again, shock rippling through the crowd. What's going on? Someone asked. Jason tried to interrupt, raising his hands to calm the situation. Emily, please, you're overreacting. Don't do this in front of everyone. She looked directly at him, feeling a mix of sadness and strength. I would do this in front of the whole world if I had to. People need to know who you really are. She opened the folder and let some of the papers fall, revealing the evidence she had found. Fraudulent contracts, compromising photos, and letters from ex-partners Jason had deceived. The whispers grew louder, and Jason, realizing he could no longer hide the truth, tried to change his approach. Emily, listen to me. You're ruining everything. This isn't what it looks like. Not what it looks like? She shot back, her anger rising. You used people like tools. You tried to use me. This is who you are, Jason, and I won't let you manipulate anyone else. With that, Emily took off her engagement ring and held it for a moment before placing it on one of the nearby tables. The crowd was completely silent. I'm not marrying you, she said again, this time with even more conviction. Jason stood there stunned as Emily turned her back and began walking away from the altar. Max followed beside her as if he were the true hero of the day, and Emily felt something new, relief. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't of sadness. They were of liberation. She had found the courage to do what she knew was right, even with all eyes on her. By the time she reached the exit, a voice called out from the crowd, Emily, are you okay? It was Rachel, who ran up to her and grabbed her arm. Emily looked at her friend and managed a small smile. I am now. And with Max by her side, she left the ceremony, feeling for the first time in a long time that she was free to be who she truly was. Max looked at her with that expression that said it all. Mission accomplished. In the days following the canceled wedding, Emily experienced a whirlwind of emotions. The news spread quickly, not just among the guests, but throughout the small surrounding community. Did you hear what happened at Emily and Jason's wedding? Became the talk of the town in cafes and local markets. Some people, especially those closer to Jason, didn't hesitate to criticize Emily. She could have handled this privately, someone commented in a group chat. It was humiliating to make that spectacle in front of everyone. Emily saw some of these messages. They hurt more than she expected, but she knew she had to deal with it. In a moment of weakness, she confided in Rachel. Maybe they're right, Emily said quietly while sitting on the living room couch. Maybe I was wrong to do that in front of everyone. Rachel, always straightforward, took Emily's hands. Listen, you did what needed to be done. If he were truly a good person, you wouldn't have found all that garbage in the cabin. People are only talking because they don't have the courage you had. Emily took a deep breath and stroked Max, who was lying beside her, as always. The silent comfort of her furry friend was one of the few things keeping her grounded. Despite the criticism, Emily also received support. Her mother called to tell her how proud she was. "You have no idea how strong you are, Emily," she said, her voice trembling over the phone. "I know it was hard, but you did what many people wouldn't have the courage to do." And there were unexpected messages. One of the women Jason had deceived in the past found Emily on social media and sent her a private message. "I saw what you did. I wish I had had your courage when it was my turn. You saved others from going through what I went through. Thank you." These words deeply moved Emily. Slowly, she began to realize that her actions weren't just about breaking free from a toxic relationship, but also about inspiring others to take control of their own lives. As the dust settled, Emily spent hours sitting in her backyard with Max. She thought about how close she had come to giving up her happiness just to meet other people's expectations. Jason had been the perfect man for everyone, and she had been led to believe that she should feel lucky to be with him. "I almost let the fear of disappointing others control my life, Max," she said, stroking his golden head. "But you showed me that I can't ignore the signs, even if it means facing everything else." Max looked at her with those eyes that always seemed to understand more than he should. Day by day, Emily felt more confident in her decision. She began to think about how she could grow from this experience. It was painful, but it was also freeing. Most importantly, she promised herself that she would never again sacrifice her happiness or dignity to meet someone else's expectations. After all, as she now knew all too well, living a lie is never a fair price to pay. A few weeks after the chaos of the canceled wedding, Emily began thinking about her next steps. There was something liberating about not having an immediate plan, but she knew she needed to fill the void left by Jason and all the confusion. One afternoon, while walking with Max in the park, she passed a small animal shelter. A sign read, "We need volunteers passionate about helping." Something about that invitation caught her attention. "What do you think, Max? Want to make some new friends?" she asked with a smile. Max wagged his tail, as he always did when he sensed something good was about to happen. The next day, Emily visited the shelter and was greeted by a middle-aged woman named Karen, the coordinator. "We love new volunteers," Karen said, showing her around. "But I'll warn you, the work here isn't easy. There's a lot of love involved, but also many challenges." "I'm ready for challenges," Emily replied, feeling for the first time in a long while that she was about to do something truly meaningful. The first days were intense. There were dogs and cats needing attention, cages to clean, and plenty of love to give. Max accompanied Emily on her visits, almost like an official assistant, helping the other animals feel more at ease. "Your dog is amazing," Karen commented one day, watching Max play with a frightened puppy. "He has a calmness that's contagious." Emily smiled, remembering how Max had been her anchor during her toughest moments. "He's more than amazing," she replied. "He saved me from myself." Working at the shelter began to change Emily. Every animal she helped seemed to bring back a piece of her joy. There was something pure and genuine in their eyes, something she felt was missing in the human world. One day, while cleaning one of the outdoor areas, Karen approached with a box full of newly rescued puppies. They were found on a deserted road. They hadn't had food or water for days, she explained, sadness in her voice. Emily picked up one of the puppies in her arms. It was small and fragile, but still had the strength to lick her nose. "We'll take care of you," she said with a smile. "I promise." In that moment, Emily realized she had found her purpose. It wasn't what she had expected, but it was exactly what she needed. The days at the shelter turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Emily began to feel more connected to herself and the world around her. Max remained by her side, now serving as the shelter's unofficial mascot, charming everyone who came by. One day, as Emily was organizing paperwork for an adoption event, Karen watched her for a moment and said, "You look different now, Emily. Lighter." Emily paused and looked at Max, who was lying calmly at her feet, observing everything. "I think I've finally found the right place," she replied. Working at the shelter not only helped Emily heal from her past wounds, but also reminded her of who she truly was, someone who values authenticity, pure love, and the chance to make a difference in the world. And with Max by her side, she knew she could face whatever the future held. It was during a routine day at the shelter, as Emily was helping prepare animals for an adoption event, that she heard an unfamiliar voice behind her. "You must be Emily," said a man with a warm smile. He held a clipboard and wore a white coat with the name Doctor Michael Turner embroidered on the chest. Emily stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Yes, that's me. And you are?" "Michael, the vet Karen mentioned. I'm here to help with the animals' checkups before the event." He crouched down to pet Max, who, as usual, was always by Emily's side. "And this must be the famous Max. I've heard he's the heart of this place." Emily smiled, surprised by Michael's ease in connecting with both her and Max. "He's the real hero around here," she replied. As the day went on, Emily and Michael ended up working side by side. He showed patience and care with every animal, talking to them as if they were old friends. "Have you always had this gift with animals?" Emily asked while Michael examined a nervous cat recently rescued. "Since I was a kid," he answered with a nostalgic smile. "My mom used to say I understood animals better than people." I think she was right. There was something about Michael that Emily couldn't ignore. He was kind, attentive, and above all, genuine. He didn't seem to be trying to impress anyone. After a few days of working together at the shelter, Michael started spending more time talking with Emily. He seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her, but without invading her space. "How did you start here?" he asked one day while they organized boxes of food. Emily hesitated for a moment. "Let's just say I needed a fresh start. I had to make a hard decision, but it was the right thing to do." Michael nodded, respecting the silence that followed. He didn't press for details, which made Emily feel comfortable. Over time, Emily realized that Michael's company was like a breath of fresh air. He didn't just make her laugh. He truly listened. Unlike Jason, he didn't seem interested in shaping or controlling her. He saw her for who she was and seemed to like that. One afternoon, as they walked around the shelter, Michael looked at Emily with a sincere smile. "You're amazing, you know that. The way you care for these animals, how much you genuinely care. It's inspiring." Emily blushed slightly, unaccustomed to receiving such genuine compliments. "I just do what I can," she replied, shrugging. Michael stopped and looked at her seriously. "You do more than that. You transform the lives of these animals. And honestly, you've transformed mine too." His words took Emily by surprise. She looked at Max, who was as usual by her side, and he seemed almost satisfied. The connection between Emily and Michael grew naturally. He didn't just admire what she did. He supported her in ways she hadn't expected. There was no pressure, just respect and understanding. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, true love was something different from what she had known before. Something purer, more sincere. What began as a genuine friendship between Emily and Michael eventually blossomed into something more. There was no rush or grand theatrical gestures, just honest conversations, spontaneous laughter, and the comfort of being together, day by day. Emily realized that, unlike her relationship with Jason, being with Michael was easy. There were no masks, no power plays. He was transparent, and that made her feel safe in a way she had never experienced before. One afternoon, while Emily was at the shelter cleaning one of the outdoor areas, Michael appeared with 2 cups of coffee and a smile. "I thought you might need a little energy," he said, handing her one of the cups. She accepted it, smiling. "You're spoiling me," she joked. Michael laughed. "Maybe just a little, but you deserve it." They sat together on a nearby bench, watching Max play with some puppies. The sun was beginning to set, and the sky had that golden hue that seemed too perfect to be real. "I never thanked you, you know," Emily said suddenly, looking at Michael. "For what?" he asked, curious. "For just being you," she replied. "After everything that happened, I thought I'd never be able to trust anyone again. But you've shown me that love can be something different, something good." Michael gently took her hand. "You've shown me something too, Emily, that it's worth waiting for something real." Max as always seemed to sense the mood. He came closer, wagging his tail and letting out a happy bark, as if he completely approved of the moment. As the months passed, Emily and Michael began spending more time together outside the shelter. He took her to some of his favorite spots in the city, like a small hidden cafe that served the best chocolate cake and a park where he used to run with his old dog. On the other hand, Emily invited him to walks with Max on trails she loved and showed him her passion for photography. They found the perfect balance between their differences and similarities. One day, while walking together, Michael looked at Emily and said, "Did you know Max approved of me from the start?" Emily laughed. "Oh, really? Did he tell you that?" "He didn't need to," Michael replied with a smile. "He never growled at me. That's already a big sign." Max, hearing his name, perked up his ears and let out a short bark, almost as if he agreed. It was on an ordinary weekend, during a peaceful walk in the park, that Michael finally decided to express what was in his heart. They were sitting on a hill, watching Max chase a ball. "Emily," he began, turning to her, "I know this might feel slow for you, and I want you to know I respect your pace, but I have to say, I love you." Emily was surprised for a moment, but not in a negative way. She looked at Michael and saw the sincerity in his eyes. She felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Peace. "I love you too," she replied with a smile. As Max returned with the ball in his mouth, looking happier than ever, Emily knew she had finally found what she was truly searching for. It wasn't just true love, it was a love that made her feel free and whole. Emily and Michael's wedding was everything she never imagined, but exactly what she needed. Without grand luxuries or appearances to maintain, the ceremony was held in the backyard of an animal shelter, surrounded by friends, family, and of course, plenty of happy animals. Max, as always, stole the show. He wore a blue bow tie that matched Michael's suit, and his proud expression was evident as he walked beside Emily down the improvised aisle. "I don't know how I'm going to top this," Rachel said as she adjusted Emily's veil moments before the ceremony. "Max is officially more stylish than anyone here." Emily laughed, feeling lighthearted. "It's his day as much as it is mine." Michael waited at the altar under a large tree adorned with white lights. When he saw Emily walking toward him, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers, his smile was so genuine that it made her heart race. The officiant, a close friend of Michael's, began the ceremony with simple yet meaningful words. "Today we celebrate not just the union of two people, but the genuine love built on respect, friendship, and companionship." During the vows, Emily held Michael's hand and looked straight into his eyes. "I never imagined my life would take this path, but I'm grateful for every step that brought me to you. You've shown me that true love doesn't require perfection, only sincerity." Michael, in turn, responded with an emotional smile. "I promise to love you for who you are, support you in everything you do, and always make sure Max gets more affection than I do." The crowd laughed, and Emily winked at Max, who sat beside them, wagging his tail energetically. After the ceremony, everyone gathered at long tables, decorated with wildflowers and hanging lights. The music was soft, and the food simple, but delicious. There was an atmosphere of genuine happiness, free from exaggeration or pretense. Max was the center of attention for much of the celebration. He wandered among the guests, accepting pats and even posing for photos in his bow tie. As the evening fell, Emily and Michael danced under the stars, with Max lying at their feet, seemingly content to have fulfilled his role once again. While the music played, Emily felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. She looked at Michael and then at Max and realized that everything she had been through, all the pain, fears, and tough choices, had brought her exactly where she was meant to be. At the end of the night, as Emily stroked Max's head, she whispered, "You were right all along. Thank you for never giving up on me." Max responded with a wag of his tail, almost as if to say, "I always knew you'd get there." Emily smiled, knowing that while life was full of surprises and challenges, she had finally found what truly mattered, a love that made her feel complete and a life filled with hope and meaning. If you made it this far, comment below. I made it to the end. Share this story and help spread the emotion to more people. Just click share and spread this amazing story.